Hey, everybody, welcome back to Tug of Heart. Wow. Had a lot to think about from the last episode. Thank you for listening. Strong Island Entertainment, as always, thank you for having us back again and helping us to sort through, sort through our lives and get comfortable with disclosure. Lori, my twin, is with me today,
Hello.
or I'm actually with her. Hi, Lori.
Hi. We're with one
Hey,
another.
Lori, got a big thing today. Today we're going to talk about mistakes.
Oh boy, don't I
And
know.
the best way to introduce mistakes is let me tell you what's not a mistake.
Okay.
What's not a mistake is the fact that we're twins. What's not a mistake is the fact that I enjoy listening to you. I'm always enamored by your thought process. And that's not a mistake. You know what would be a big mistake, Lori?
To not have the attention span for me?
What?
No, I was saying if you didn't have the attention span. Okay, you tell me, you answer. I thought you were asking
Who
me.
are you?
I thought you were asking me.
What would be a mistake is if we didn't carve out this time as siblings. And that's in no way, you know, passing judgment on anybody. I mean, we're very fortunate that we can do this, but it would be a mistake to not do it. So today we're going to talk about mistakes in all their various forms, and not all of them, but in many of them. And yeah, run with it, Lori.
Well,
I know
for starters,
this is your department. I knew when we were going to talk about mistakes that like this is Lori's gig.
I finally come in like a pro with plenty of resources to tap into. I got a lot of info here. No, actually, when you're like, well, tap into all of them. The one thing that I can be sure of is that we can never exhaust the mistake, because I feel like my life is continuously recognizing a mistake, adjusting, moving forward. And I'll be darned if the one thing that I don't, that does not just trump, absolutely overcome my ability to correct any type of mistake, is my creativity for finding a new way to make mistakes. Completely outdo myself all the time. And I think we all do. Now, this is where things kind of start to matter, because I try to tell myself when I think of it, not that I'm doing this all the time, but so you make a mistake, you stick to it, or you like the mistake and you're like, I kind of like it. I'm going to keep doing that mistake anyways. Now I'm going to train somebody else. You got to do it my way, right? Watch it a certain way. There might be a better way, but you're kind of fixated on yours. We get attached to even our mistakes. To start with, one of the things we can have a look at is to know the difference between, and I'm not saying I know the difference, but it's one of the things that I ask myself when I'm feeling a little judgy about other people. So I'll be like, are they wrong? Are they wrong? And I'm right to feel like this level of whatever I'm feeling, or are they mistaken? So now for myself and for others, if you feel somebody is mistaken, how should we approach that? So last time we were talking about lies, and kind of, I guess it ended with a sense of how we recover from the lie, or your word, heal, because I don't use the word heal. How do we heal after we've recognized a particular lie and we want to correct, we want to realign with our heart and live from the heart in a sense that is true, honest, and good for who we're meant to be and who we want to be. So having said that, what do you think the difference is, Leroy? I'm going to toss it right back at you between being wrong and being mistaken. And why would it matter? I know you're not prepared, but there you go.
I think we have to kind of rebrand these words.
Okay.
Mistakes, wrong. Both of them are tolerable if we see them. Dad used to always tell me, he used to say, you're going to make mistakes. He says, and the winners are found in who can most quickly recover from the mistakes, because the mistakes are going to happen. He said, you cannot avoid the mistakes. You're not going to walk through life and be like, yeah, look at me. I just don't make mistakes. No, you're going to make them. And he used to say it's better to make them when you're younger because you have more energy. You, you don't hang on to them because when you get older, it takes a lot more out of you to rectify the mistake. So wrong, mistakes, tomato, tomato, I think. Like you, I mean, I've got a fantastic library, volumes of mistakes, and I gotta be honest, Dad, he was right. I think the wonderful thing about him is that we talked not so long ago about perception, and it's like in the moment we're immediately inundated with just like, whoa, how could I have been so wrong? We beat ourselves up. Well, truth is, we're spending more energy beating ourselves up than what it takes to just get it right. I was a contractor for a good long while.
Well, I still are technically, I guess.
What's that?
Still technically are.
Right, right. At a different level. But when I knew I was going to make mistakes. I knew I was because I didn't know enough. I knew enough to get a license, but I knew I hadn't seen everything. And the funny thing is, I was so aware of the mistakes that were going to happen. I used to say, I have to bid this job with the most integrity. There has to be value in my bid. And in that bid, I have to be cautious that I can afford to do it, undo it, and do it right. Because I built my mistake into my bid. Now that sounds funny, but I was willing to do a job twice if I had to get it right. And so, I'm just telling you that because I was so aware that the mistakes were going to happen that I planned on them. And sometimes I'd be pleasantly surprised and I could be like, this went way better than I planned, way better than I expected. Here's your modified invoice.
Nice.
It happens. It happened. So the mistakes, I think somewhere along the lines, maybe from our parents, we just were taught that there was like such little room for error, just zero margin in pleasing them, in making them proud of us, that a lot of mistakes or a lot of being wrong wasn't nearly as much a mistake or as much being wrong as we ever thought, because in doing it wrong, I got to tell you, sometimes we figure out a way that is way better.
I absolutely agree with that. What's that?
When you do things, you build stuff, Lori. We have that aptitude. We're mechanically inclined. But when you build things, and I've seen you build things, and some of it, I just say to myself, Lori, I don't know where you're going with it, and I want to correct you. And then I see other things, and I'm like, man, you got it right. In absolutely just vomiting creativity, and you ended up getting it right. And I think that those are mistakes that, like you were talking about holding on to them, but we cannot be afraid, Lori. You can't be afraid, and I can't be afraid to make the mistakes, because sheer genius and brilliance is found in mistakes sometimes.
It is. It's like those happy accidents. I liked what you're saying about mistakes, because you're like I was thinking how much better things come out when you make mistakes, because you kind of have along the way, if you've made mistakes to any completion of something, you have the guarantee that you've exhausted what won't work. So there's a higher certainty of what has. And philosophically, just in a very casual philosophical way, I always think, like, a lot of times what we define in life, we begin always by defining what it is not. And now that comes from mistakes. Like, you take my first 9 husbands, right? I had to first define what, I'm kidding, by the way, for those of you listening. So
7.
7, right? No, but you have, you sometimes have to exhaust. And for me, because I am a little bit stubborn, but you have to know what something is not sometimes. Do you remember you were saying about believing our parents, right? They may say something life-saving and we're kind of pitted against it and resentful. But the fact of the matter is, they may save our life. Now, having said that, on another level, there are some things that everybody can tell you. And unless you have tried and failed yourself, there's something that doesn't stick as much, right? And I don't know why that is. But I do know this because you're a math guy, and I do believe this is why you are a very successful math guy. And I think this is why people that do well at math do. And that's that they jump in and they do the math. They just do the math. They don't require that they can completely understand and foresee the theory behind the math formula or whatever else that they're reading. They go in and they begin to make mistakes because it's by that self-correction that you get to understand the true dynamics of what's happening mathematically. It's by making a mistake when you're working on an engine that you get a deeper sense, and you have to, only by recovering from a mistake do you really understand this one component that may have just been a layer above what you're actually trying to get to in the engine beneath it. Don't you think so? What do you think about that? Because you've taken apart a ton of stuff in your life. I think you've probably, I don't know anybody else who's done as much. That's part of the learning, though, right?
I'm gonna tell you something, and I'm gonna tell you about a mistake.
Okay.
And it is literally the very first job I ever did
I don't know why I'm
in
laughing.
construction.
I don't know what it is, but I'm laughing already.
Okay, so I walked out of a job that I loved, where I was paid well, and I left that job not for monetary reasons, not because I was unhappy. I left the job because I missed too many parent-teacher conferences. I left the job because I missed too many dance recitals, too many cheerleading activities. And it wasn't worth it. There came a point where the money was not worth it. And so I left my job, and the following day, the day after leaving my job, I said, well, I'm going to go work for 4 hours, and then I'm going to take my shoes off in the park, and I'm going to eat lunch for an hour uninterrupted, and then I'm going to go for 4 more hours. And my job was to find a job. So I said, well, I guess I can be a handyman. And so I started knocking on doors, 8 o'clock in the morning. True story. Was it a mistake? A lot of people would say, like, you quit your job without having another job? That was a mistake. So let me tell you about a series of mistakes. Before I even made it to lunch, I popped into a real estate office, and I walked in, and at this point, I'm just like, I got to have a job. And I said, do you guys have any clients that need something repaired on their house? I said, that's what I do. They said, you repair things? Are you a contractor? I said, no. I said, but I fix things. I said, matter of fact, that's what I do more than anything else. And they said, it's funny that you popped in, because the handyman that we typically use he couldn't come in today, and we have a closing, and can you go? And they gave me keys to a house, no business card.
Speaking of mistakes, I'm just kidding.
No, I'm telling you, it's a series of mistakes. So they give me keys to a house, and this is sad, even before GPS. And I go out to the house, and there's a list of things, that came up in an inspection report that needed to be satisfied in order for this home to close. So I go through, and some of them were very simple, like identifying what switch turned on, what did the switch actually work. And I walked in with a lamp, of all things, with a lamp. And I started plugging the lamp in everywhere and flicking the switch, and eventually I got it. Well, I came to this window, and it was a picture window. If you don't know what a picture window is, just imagine a big square window or rectangle window, but it is not a slider. It's just a picture. Okay. There's no moving parts. You can't pull it out. And the seal had failed, so I had condensation between the glass on a double paned window. And I look around, and I can't figure out for the life of me. There's not enough room to put a blade in. I cannot figure out how to get the window out. So I walk away, and I went and did something else and fixed it. And I ended up working on the gas fireplace because it didn't work, and I took it apart. I could see absolutely nothing wrong with it. I put it back together, and it worked. And I was like, okay, we're getting somewhere. I walk back to the window. I look at it some more inside, walk outside. I can't figure out how to get this glass out. I go through, I finish whatever other little odds and ends are there, and I come back to the window. It all started with this window. And finally, I go to I don't even think I had a service truck back then. I had a car. And I got out a blanket, and I put it on the ground outside the window. Oh, no, so I'm inside looking at a blanket on the ground outside that's spread out. And I throw a brick through the window.
What?
True story. I threw a brick through the window. And then, as I'm pulling out the pieces of glass, I see how the window is installed. I see how it went in. And I pull it. So now I have to leave the house totally open while I go down and get a replacement window. I didn't know anything. So I went down into this glass and glazing. I remember they called it glazing. And so I went down to this glass company, and I said, I need a window. And they're like, okay, when would you like to have that? I'm like, in 30 minutes? And they're like, well, wait. And I said, well, let me explain what happened. I said, I'm kind of just becoming a handyman. I didn't know how to get this window out. And I've got a house that I was entrusted with, and I'm not even licensed. And I have to put a window back in. I don't have the luxury of leaving it open. Otherwise, I got to go get plywood. And I said, you got to help me. And the guy says, all right, but we're going to need more notice in the future. I said, no problem. Now I know how to get them out. So the guy makes me the window. I take it back. I pick up a tube of caulking, or he gave me a tube of caulking. And then he told me how to put in the trim ring on the outside. And I went and I cleaned everything really nice, picked up the broken glass, put a bead of silicone, set the window in, and put in all the trim on the outside. And I walked away from the job a success. There's a mistake. But our willingness to just make the mistakes and recover from them, like Dad said, is actually where success is found.
I like that. That's true.
But now that you take out a window, what it did for me in terms of confidence, that was day one. That was the day after leaving a job where I was very secure and handsomely, paid. And I left that comfort to be on my own and to be independent and to not miss parent-teacher conferences. Was it a mistake to leave my job? Absolutely. Was it a mistake to leave before I had another job? Absolutely. Was it a mistake to throw the brick through the window? It was. But you know what wasn't a mistake? All of that.
Aw, I like that.
It was the right thing to do. So when we talk about mistakes, Laurie, and I think mistakes are good. And this tug of heart came about because we want to get familiar with our heart, not negotiate with our heart.
Right.
And I think negotiating with our heart is dangerous.
Absolutely. Yes.
We gotta be true, because if we're true to our heart, Lori, there I don't I think that we're gonna really, really, really reduce the frequency of mistakes or the severity
Well,
of the mistake.
I think from what you said, and when you do face a mistake, it and you are true to your heart in that mistake, you can it more readily becomes a meaningful one. Something that is learned from, not only learned from, built upon, it becomes your affirmation, confidence later, that confirmation that you made the right choice the day before, that mistaken choice. And the same thing could happen framed just a little bit differently, right? Like kind of outside your heart. You quit because someone made you mad at work, not because of a moral tug to be more available for a child, but just because emotional decision, reactive decision. But just the fact that you're in your heart lends itself, in my opinion, to be the start of a series of purposeful mistakes that will lead to little by little disclosing who you are to yourself as revealed by you from within your heart. Right?
You're right.
Another thing I was picturing while you were saying that, I've never heard that story, so I think it's just really funny. I was picturing the time that you wedged yourself between two trees. You used to, man, you used to love to climb, loved to climb. And you had done this in a doorway where you realized, hey, I've just reached the length that a human being needs to be, where I can put my feet on one side of the door jamb, is that what you call it? And my back to the other, and I can climb up. And you're like, I can climb the world if I can do this. Well, you decided to do it by climbing two very, very, very tall trees. So you took your feet, planted them on one side, your back on the other, and inched your way up, 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 up. One of the mistakes that you made, you were a kid, a tiny kid, too tiny to be doing this, is that as you had gotten higher, you hadn't accounted for a tiny and gradual gap happening in the trees, so that your legs were coming further from your back. And you're young and agile, nimble, able to maintain it on the way up, but you hadn't thought about that first slide back down, and you were unable to make it. Some mistakes, no matter what our intention is, can be really dangerous. That was a really dangerous situation. Thank goodness it ended not with a broken limb, but probably a spanking. I don't even remember. But I do remember, I believe you were brought down by our parents, our dad at least, right?
Man, and I'll tell you what, I remember specifically two things. Number one, I remember you putting your sweater at the bottom, at the base of the trees.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, if you fall, follow my sweater. Like, okay. I remember that was a blue sweater.
Yes.
And I also remember saying, go get dad, go get dad. You know, I made a mistake. I thought he would be just, wow, look at my son. You know, look at what he's done. That is remarkable.
You mistook his reaction. Big mistake in what you expected.
I did not. There was very little left to interpretation when I saw the vein in his forehead.
Yeah.
You know, that was different. So mistakes, yeah. I mean, they're gonna happen. They're going to happen. But those nefarious mistakes where they involve our heart. I mean, I think it's a lot. I always hate to say, like, you know, oh, think about it, get spiritual on things. I don't like to guide people in that way. But I got to be honest, I think it's never a bad idea to look inside and kind of say like, what does your heart tell you to do? Because
Right.
I think if you move and act upon the guidance of your heart, I think the recovery for the inevitable mistake much easier.
And if it's not, it's much more bearable when you're in the heart. You have a little bit more.
What do you mean?
I mean, if you're coming from a right spot, even if there's difficulty recovering from a mistake, you have you're in the right spirit or consciousness or awareness to take it a little bit more in stride. Where if there's some kind of external like consequence to your mistake, you don't compound it with your own like self-flagellation. Oh, I'm gonna, I'm so upset. Why? Stupid. But there's this gentleness with yourself, and that can be one of the most painful experiences of a mistake, is how it can alter our view of ourself. And it's good to be forgiving with ourselves. Having said that, I would add that when people do make mistakes, until you see like a serious trend and pattern, uh, it's always the decent human thing to make some room for people to make mistakes and not be a whole lot harder than you would be with a boy who's climbed a tree, because really we're not that far removed from that time. A lot's happened, but people work really slow. So we have to have that patience. 40 years doesn't mean like I could never possibly do this. I probably have gotten stuck in a tree after you, having witnessed it. So just to be gentle with one another, right? And a little yielding, like you said, if not forgiving, yielding.
I'm going to give a huge shout out
Mm-hmm.
to your husband.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I'm going to give a huge shout out to him is because there's a lot of people on this planet that don't have the luxury that you and I have of sitting here talking about mistakes. Your husband makes a mistake, people die.
Right.
That's an unfortunate, noble, but that is a challenging place to be. Medical, a doctor, and anybody in the medical field, a scientist. Like, you make a mistake, how many people have regretted or just live their life in sorrow because they invented something that would be the backbone for ugly death. Wow. And I think sometimes we have to be more patient. It's an old joke when we sit around and be like, well, maybe they don't understand, the politics of an appointment, because I'm waiting.
Mm-hmm.
I get in, they move me to a smaller room, and then from that room to an even smaller room. And now the doctor will see you 40 minutes after. Thank goodness they're patient, that they are patient and have the patience to really do their best to avoid mistakes. Because when it's you that needs the help, you don't want mistakes.
Right.
So now we get back into another thing, which is tolerance and being patient. But wow, how lucky are we to not be in that situation. So for now, I think we walk away and let's just not celebrate our mistakes and not welcome them and greedily make them, but
kind of have a little peace with them. If
yeah, a little bit of peace, learn from them.
Yeah, and a little acceptance when they do it. And the other thing is, that doesn't mean you just need to dive in saying, "I'll be so gentle and excuse myself." Be diligent.
Sure.
But
so with that, you
mm-hmm.
can always heart us or emoji us.
Oh yes.
On all these different forums, of which there are many. Thank you again to Strong Island Entertainment for hosting us and letting us work through our mistakes. We're working hard to bring productive content so that you will never look at us as a mistake.
Aw. Yes.
Okay.
That's it. Until next time, please farewell, everybody.
Peace out.